Mr. Bolsonaro, a far-right former army captain who hasn't been backwards when coming forward with words of praise for Brazil's former military dictatorship. He's just been elected the country's new president. He'll take office in January next year. This is a nation with a huge crime problem and has been mired in corruption scandals. Clearly there is a lot of poverty in this enormous country, the world's fourth biggest democracy. Brazil, in its modern history, has always had its far-right supporters and candidates for office. Military tough guys or wannabe tough guys rallying against the drug gangs and the insidious threat of communism. "Our flag will never be red" is a slogan you might hear being chanted at a nationalist rally in Brazil. Bolsonaro and the movement that supports him is clearly hardline, authoritarian. He says that as president, he will be a defender of democracy. I don't see how that squares with his views on the former military regime and his defence of that dictatorship's killing of its critics, its enemies, its opponents. What he wants to do is relax gun laws for honest citizens. Yeah. I would think it's fairly obvious that a man like Bolsonaro has a fight fire with fire mindset when it comes to dealing with the drug gangs in Brazil. Say one soldier or one cop gets killed in the line of duty. Maybe the president sends his paramilitary forces into the favelas. Bullets start flying all over the place. Lots of innocent people killed, including young children. His fiery rhetoric makes many people nervous, as you'd expect. Bolsonaro's party did well in congressional elections recently, but the left-wing candidate Mr. Haddad, the man he defeated, his party still has more seats. There is a record number of parties being represented in Brazil's next Congress. 30 political parties, I believe, which could prove to be a bit of a headache for the new president when it comes to passing legislation. Would it shock you to learn that Mr. Bolsonaro has been accused in the past of being racist, misogynistic, and homophobic? A far-right authoritarian holding bigoted views. A little bit far-fetched, right? Amnesty International have identified his rise as a huge risk for minority groups, civil rights groups, and women in the country. He has appealed to huge numbers of Brazilians in his homeland by putting violent crime front and centre as his number one priority, tackling violent crime. The murder rate in Brazil is really scary. People naturally want to live in a safer environment. He's offering simple answers. Liberalise gun laws, more powers to the police, reduce the age of criminal responsibility, restore the death penalty, etc. Yeah. That some of his supporters are calling Bolsonaro their saviour or their salvation is truly disturbing. A lot of people tired of the Workers' Party have made the leap over to Bolsonaro's side. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, or simply Lula. Whatever happened to that guy? Remember him? He, of course, was the former president whose programs helped millions out of poverty during the country's booming economic growth period, but shit went south, I'm afraid, and Brazil ended up in the worst recession it's ever had. Now, perhaps, it's coming out of this. But for Lula, well, Lula's in prison now, guilty of corruption. See the Operation Car Wash scandal, which rocked Brazil to its core. As seems to be the case, whenever an ultra-right, possibly fascistic movement or candidate wants to take power by the ballot box, certain factors or ingredients are needed. A struggling economy, resentment and fear surrounding the issue of crime, government corruption, and maybe a perception that the left is destroying traditional values. So, yeah, as far as Bolsonaro goes, he's timed this well, hasn't he? So, yeah, this is where South America's largest nation finds itself now.